Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I hope you've been following what's going on in Israel because this really is a big deal. I've been following it all weekend ever since I made that video, ever since it's been happening. And I'm just more and more shocked as time goes on. On Saturday, I don't think that any of us really had that clear of a picture of what's going on, but now it is Monday and we have more details and it just gets uglier and uglier and uglier. Before I continue, I forgot to add this into my video as I was recording it, so I'm adding this later as I'm editing it. I got an email from Elie Michel from Israel 365 News. He asked me to put this out on my channel, and I have accepted that invitation. Emergency Monday prayer for Israel with Yair Levi and Rabbi Tuly Weisz. And that is going to be at 12 o'clock Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Jerusalem time. So I would invite you to pray during that time for Israel, that everyone that's been captured will be rescued and safely returned home, and that this conflict can end as soon as possible and as peaceably as possible. Also, I checked on Rabbi Gerfine and he said, so far, so good. Prayers are always appreciated. So he, for the moment, is okay. And yeah, now on with the video. I have my X account. First off, I'll say I have my X account. You can go there, you can follow me, but I am reposting all the videos that I'm finding that give the clearest picture of what's been going on. And it is really bad. So I'm not gonna put any of it on YouTube because it's really, really, really bad. Very disturbing. So viewer discretion. I'm sure that some of you already are on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I'm sure that you already know. Most of that stuff is probably coming over on your feed. But if you're new to X or you're thinking about doing it, just beware. There's things that are on there that are essentially unspeakable, things that I don't even want to repeat or describe. So if you haven't been following it, and I'm sure that there's some people that haven't, just yesterday I was talking to some people at church and they weren't aware of what was going on in Israel. Which, that's fine. I was talking to Jenica about this, and I think that the whole world, to some extent, is kind of like desensitized to violence in the Middle East and in Israel, just because there's been so much. All the time you're hearing about, small scale terrorist attacks or stabbings or, things like that. Somewhat frequently, maybe at least once a year, there's rocket attacks from somewhere, whether it's in the north or whether it's in the south. And so it's kind of like the boy that cried wolf type of thing where everyone's like, oh yeah, whatever. Isn't there always violence over there? And that is true, but not to this extent. This really, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This really might be it. And there's many reasons why I think that. Okay. So for one thing, there's the surprise nature of this attack, which makes it similar to the Yom Kippur War, which was the closest that Israel came to annihilation back in 1973. And this happened almost exactly 50 years to the day. It was just one day. The 50-year anniversary on the Gregorian calendar was one day before this attack occurred on the 7th of October. We've talked about how it's interesting that it happened on the 7th of all days, and then we're in the 10th month, so you have two numbers of completion and perfection. That's a well-known thing within Judaism. They view both those numbers that way. And so that's interesting, but beyond that, and this is something that we couldn't have known on Saturday, is the death toll. And we don't have I don't think the full death toll yet of how many people died on Saturday. But I want to show you something really quick in regards to that. Let me pull up this. By the way, if you're looking for dramatic, cinematic, classic apocalyptic scenes, I think this does pretty well. What you're seeing right here, of course, this is in the Gaza Strip. But let me show you. Let me show you the research that I've previously done. I made a video where I did a video where I was arguing or exploring the idea that the entire Arab-Israeli conflict has been the final war, that it's been going on for these 75 years. There's a lot of people that like to stick to these numbers in a very literal way that you find in Daniel, that you find in Revelation and stuff. And I don't think that that's what those numbers are meant for, but I've talked about that ad nauseum on this channel. I have playlists for the book of Daniel. I have a playlist for symbolism. I have a playlist for the book of Revelation. I have a playlist for the 7-year tribulation period. And I've stuck to church sources and what they have said about these numbers. So that's the position that I take. Now, what I do believe is that a lot of these numbers are symbolic, and they're meant to represent a time of distress. They're meant to represent a time when Satan has full power. It's a time of apostasy, wickedness, and stuff like that. And so that's how I tend to think of the final war. What I did is on this timeline, I listed all the different conflicts and wars and intifadas or rebellions and all the death tolls that I could possibly find. And these numbers, I believe, are conservative because some of them it's hard to find. Some of the countries that were involved in some of these wars haven't reported any casualties, either because they didn't take the time to count them or they don't release them as official policy. I don't know. But, okay, so just like my other timelines, at the top is the most recent things. At the top is 2023. And then when you go down, you go back in time. And so I'm not going to show the article, but I'll link it in the description below. The most recent article that I read said that the death toll of Israelis is 700. So you have to put that in context to realize how bad that is. It's already, bad. I would hope that anyone would view that as bad. 700 is a lot of people. But let's compare it to previous conflicts. So I want you to pay attention. Let me make sure that okay. I want you to pay attention to these two columns right here, columns D and E. Okay. So for example, in the 2021 Israel-Palestine crisis, there was one IDF, or in other words, one military death on the Israeli side, and then there were 12 civilian deaths. Okay. So that's just an example. 2014, I should, let me do something so that this row follows us as we go down. So 2014, okay, here was kind of a bigger one, 67 military deaths and 6 civilians. All right, here we are at the 2006 Second Lebanese War, or Lebanon War, 121 military, 44 civilian. Okay, now the Second Intifada, 301 military and 773 civilian. So I just told you that on Saturday that the death toll was 700. That was just on day one. Well, actually, I guess it would include Sunday too. Saturday, Sunday, and then parts of today. But at the very, very beginning of this conflict, already it's at 700. Some of those are military because when they, okay, let me show you what happened. Let me pull up Google Earth. Give me 1 second. Because this is the other thing about it, is how this played out. The way that it's played out has not been like other attacks. On Saturday, there was a woman that said, this is actually more terrifying than the regular attacks, because with regular attacks, it's just missiles, and so there's missiles, you hear the sirens, you take cover, and then after a little while, everything's okay. But in this case, that's not what happened at all this time. Uh, well, there was a rocket attack, but you have the Gaza Strip right here. Okay, very small piece of land, and there's a fence and like a border fence that goes around the entire. I believe the entire thing. Um, so what they did is they punched holes through portions of the fence, and they actually went on foot into these neighboring Jewish communities and kibbutz, which is like a kibbutz is like it's like a communal farm, it's like a community. It's it's that type of thing. So what happened is instead of just firing rockets, they actually invaded on foot, and they went into these neighboring small towns and communities, and they indiscriminately killed people. And there's plenty of footage of that on X if you want to see it. And you can go to my X account if you want. But again, it's very disturbing and almost, I would say, almost psychologically damaging. I almost kind of wish that I hadn't seen all those things. It was absolutely brutal. So they came in on foot, meaning sometimes literally on foot, other times with motorcycles and trucks and stuff like that. They came into these small communities and they were just killing everybody. They were actually going door to door killing people. People had to like escape, go through their windows onto the roof of their building and try and figure out a way to get out of there. But they were going door to door, killing everybody, and then whatever their criteria was, they were selecting people to abduct and take back to Gaza. And this they spared nobody. This included families, like I don't know if they abducted entire families, but I know that they've killed entire families. They've abducted children, like even babies, children, men, women, and the elderly. There's a few videos. There's a few videos where they show these elderly women that they've taken back to Gaza, and they parade them around the streets like in a golf cart or a truck or something like that, a Jeep. That's what they're doing, or that's what they've done. And I can't remember what the number was, but it's at least over 100, I think, people that have been taken captive. I think a couple hundred, somewhere in that range. So this was really, really bad. And they're still, the last I heard, they're still fighting down here in the south. They haven't, the Israelis haven't taken care of all of them. And, but I think they've retaken most of the land that they had invaded. They were able to take some Israeli military vehicles. They attacked there's like a small base down here. And they took, for example, a tank and some other vehicles like Humvees and stuff like that. They stole tractors. You can see that there's a bunch of like farmland down here. They stole tractors from these civilians and brought those back to Gaza. They attacked by what are they called? Paragliders. Okay, so what's it called when like when there's like a paraglider, but then you have like a motor with like a propeller in the back, so that you like stay aloft. They had those. They had excuse me. They had those kind of things to go over the border. They also attacked by sea, but the sea attack wasn't as successful. So it was a very sophisticated attack. And it later came out, I believe on Sunday, maybe on Saturday, later in Saturday, but Sunday for sure, that Iran was the one that basically planned all this. And because that Hamas and other groups are funded by Iran, and Iran, coordinates them. They're basically, as you read all the time in the news, they're proxies of Iran. And so it took Israel completely by surprise. They're still trying to figure out how this happened. It was a complete surprise attack. they're going so far as to saying that this is Israel's 9/11 and Israel's Pearl Harbor, which I find concerning because when you say things like that to the public, um, it has a really strong psychological impact, and it kind of like defines the event and what it's going to be like. Sorry, my eyes itching. Okay, so they're calling it Israel's Pearl Harbor and 9/11, which goes to show you the scale of what's occurring. Now, of course, it's on the scale of Israel. Israel's a small country, but the seriousness of it to Israel is really it's really intense. They were saying that it was the single deadliest event in Israeli history, the single deadliest event that has taken place. Um, so this is not a normal thing. If you think that, oh, isn't there always violence over there? That's true, but not like this. Not at all. The thing that's even more concerning than that is what they've decided to call the operation. And I'm talking about Hamas. They decided to call it Al-Aqsa Flood and also Al-Aqsa Storm. I've heard both of those names, which clearly it broadcasts to the world, hey, join in. And they've said, I read all the different statements on Saturday. The Hamas, they're talking about destroying Israel and being serious about it this time. And they're calling on everybody. On Saturday, I read you a Jerusalem Post story where the Taliban is asking Iran and Jordan and Iraq to be able to have passage through those countries to join the attack. I guess we're going to have to wait and see if that actually comes to fruition. But the Taliban in Afghanistan, which is pretty far away, want to cross through those countries to come join in Israel and quote unquote capture Jerusalem. And one thing that's developed since the last video that I did is that Hezbollah has started to join in. There's been mortars and rocket fire. I don't think to the max. I think there's still a lot more to come. I've heard different analysts talk about how Hezbollah may want to, they're the ones that are up north in Lebanon. The Gaza Strip is south. So I've heard analysts say that they may want to wait until the Israelis do a ground invasion, and it does look like that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of videos on X of tanks and troops making their way to the Gaza Strip. There's an accumulation of troops that are building up there, and it does look like there's going to be a ground invasion. In fact, Israel has said that its objectives is basically to destroy Hamas completely, take away all their military capabilities, as well as their governance. So if you take those two things away, it seems to me like Hamas is going to be completely destroyed. Everything but killing every single one of them, because I'm sure they'll take lots of prisoners. So analysts have said that Hezbollah is probably going to wait for like the main thing until Israel does the ground attack. In my own analysis of that, not that I'm an expert, but I would think that maybe they would do that because within the Muslim world, and there are a lot of Muslims in the world. We looked this up before. About 24% of the world population is Muslim. So there's a wide spectrum of beliefs and attitudes toward Israel and whatever. So if you have like this much that already support what's going on, but you want to get a little bit more, like the people that are a little bit more on the fence, then you may want to wait for something like that to happen, because then it gives you more justification and you can win more support. Because I think a lot of this operation is very psychological. And I think that's why they decided this time to abduct all these people. This hasn't happened before. Maybe at very small, on a very small scale, where they wanted maybe to like have a prisoner swap. So they go and abduct somebody. They capture an Israeli soldier as a bargaining piece to get some of their prisoners released. But nothing like this. We're talking about hundreds of civilians and some soldiers. So this whole thing started out very, very, very brutal and very psychologically damaging. And I think that that's intentional. It's not like, they're just, it was like a free for all. It was planned. So one obvious reason why they may do that is because by bringing them back to Gaza, they can use them as human shields. They said that they were going to bring them down into the tunnels and some of their other locations. So they would use that as like a human shield so that Israel doesn't attack those positions. So that's like one obvious advantage for them, or why they may do that. But I think a second one is to really stir up anger. And why would they want to do that? I think it's because they want to get the Israelis really, really upset, and for them to, cross red lines that other countries and other Muslims may have set. Because even though they would view Israel retaliating as justified to a certain extent, for some, doing a ground invasion would cross a red line, or if they go even further, it'd cross more red lines for other groups. And so I think that they intentionally did this to be very, very, very provocative, to basically make Israel do things that it hasn't done before. And in that way, draw in more support, not just public support, but get more groups to actually get involved in the actual fighting. Because if they're serious about destroying Israel, they didn't accomplish that on Saturday. That was just, I think it's pretty safe to say that was just the first phase of a much larger thing that they're trying to get going. And so trying to get everybody upset, everybody as mad as possible so that this can happen, because Hamas can't destroy Israel alone. They need the support of everybody, including other nations. And they have called on other nations to join in and destroy Israel. And I don't know how likely that is, but I'm not going to say it's an impossibility. So, like I said, at least one nation seems to be taking this seriously, and that's Afghanistan. I would really like to see if they are actually going to send people to join in the fight. But anyway, the other thing is that they started out this conflict by just ruthlessly and barbarically killing everybody, sparing no one. Sparing no one. Like, there's videos of people, up in their condos looking down on the street as they see these death squads roaming the streets, shooting at passing cars. Just, and worse than that, believe me, worse than that. So that sets the precedent for this conflict of this needs to not just be like a military thing. If we're serious about destroying Israel, then basically kill them all. And there's people that respond to that. In fact, I saw one story of a woman that during this thing, I think in Jerusalem, and this happens from time to time, but there was a woman that tried to attack, military police or whoever it was, with a knife, like a stabbing attack. And, so if everybody like looks back on this, they look back to this last weekend and they're feeling the urge to join in, and they're like really ramping this up. This is Al-Aqsa flood. Again, if you don't know what Al-Aqsa is, that's the third holiest site in Islam, and it's on the Temple Mount. This is, a big part of this is recapturing Jerusalem and taking the Temple Mount back to their satisfaction, because they haven't liked when Israeli police have come on and stopped violence and rioting and stone throwing and stuff like that. They don't want any more Israeli police coming on the Temple Mount. They want to have East Jerusalem as their capital. But more than that, with this conflict, like I've said, they've talked about just finally doing this. They've referred to it as the last battle. They've said things like, this is it. This is the time. So they're dead serious. And so, like I said, by starting out just killing everybody and anybody, it gives the example to other people to do the same thing throughout the country. And the problem with Israel is that you do have, Palestinian neighborhoods, you do have Israeli or Jewish neighborhoods and communities and stuff like that. So in some places there is separation, but in other places there's not. There are Israeli Arabs that live in different places in Israel mixed in with the Jews. On top of that, you have the Palestinians, like you have Jerusalem, for example, which is a very mixed city. There are like different sections where, most are Muslim, most are Jewish, Muslim quarter, Jewish quarter, Armenian quarter, whatever. But it's all very mixed. And so let me just put it this way. If I was living in Israel right now, I don't think I would feel very secure anywhere because, for one thing, it's a very small country, geographically speaking. But even if you're living in let's say that you're living out in the country and you live in a small town and it's a Jewish community, it doesn't take that long to drive from one side to the other. In fact, I was thinking about this yesterday. Let me go back to Google Earth and I'm going to just measure. Well, let's measure. I didn't even think about this. Let's measure from the West Bank boundary or border to Tel Aviv. And let's do this in miles. Yeah, so from the West Bank to Tel Aviv, like to the coast, that's only like 14 and a half miles. So it wouldn't take very long for someone over here to get over here. Okay, let's look at somewhere else. Let's go from like the Sea of Galilee to Haifa. And that is only a little over 37 and a half miles. So if there was like a straight line road that went down this path, it would only take you about, 40 minutes or so. Less than 40 minutes, really, to drive from one side to the other. So it doesn't take much time to get places. Of course, there's going to be like military checkpoints probably set up over time. Maybe there already are. I'm not too familiar with how things are set up over there, before this conflict. But anyway, you get the point. Generally speaking, even though you have separated communities in Israel, everybody's pretty well mixed in. So if you get enough people radicalized, then it can turn into a really bloody mess. Because for one thing, if you have a war like Russia and Ukraine, you have you have like both forces pretty well separated. Russia's over here, Ukraine's over here, and we're fighting right here. Or if you have a civil war, it's typically the same thing. Maybe it gets a little bit more complicated, but it's typically the same thing. You have this side of the country and you have this side of the country. Like in the Syrian civil war, there's certain areas that are under control of the rebels. Then you have other sides that are under control of the government. But with something like this with Israel, if you have everybody so mixed together, it may be even more complicated than that. And as time goes on, the longer that this lasts, I feel like the more people are going to become enraged and radicalized and maybe do some pretty drastic things. Now, I was looking yesterday, and yesterday is when I saw the first videos come out of East Jerusalem. Sorry, let me go back to Google Earth. So, Jerusalem, I'm sure most of you know, but some of you don't. Jerusalem is essentially divided into like East Jerusalem and then West Jerusalem. West Jerusalem is going to be the more modern part of the city. And then East Jerusalem is typically referring to the old city, um, and its surrounding areas. This is the city, the part of Jerusalem that everybody is fighting over. Uh, more particularly the Temple Mount, of course. But this is where the original Jerusalem was. It first started out in the city of David, in the time of David, and this little thing right here, like this street that goes around this area, this was the city of David. This was the original Jerusalem, but then it expanded when Solomon, he built the Temple Mount up here and had the temple constructed up here, and then over time, I don't know exactly how it went out, but it basically over time it kind of expanded. But then all this became Jerusalem, the Jerusalem that we talk about in the scriptures. So obviously this is like what everybody wants. And this is what the fighting is about. So what I saw yesterday is that there is fighting that I don't know if it's still happening right now, but there is fighting that has taken place in East Jerusalem and in its surrounding areas. In fact, specifically, I can't remember if it was this place right here, but there was they were saying that there's like a refugee camp that's just like a stone's throw away from the old city. But there has been fighting in this area. It hasn't been too clear to me who has been involved, but there were troops that were going into, I think, that refugee camp, and then there was fighting going on. So this conflict, even if it's on a small scale, has already reached Jerusalem itself. And again, we're only at the beginning of this war. Anytime now, probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, something like that, Gaza is going to be invaded, a ground invasion. And like I said, I think that that's a red line for different groups, or that's a line that Hezbollah wants them to cross first so that they can gain support. And things could escalate very quickly and in a very unpredictable way. Another thing that happened was the U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier strike group to the Eastern Mediterranean, so basically to Israel, to show support. But I saw some analysis talk about how they may need to do things there because, like, if other countries lose their minds and they decide that they want to join the conflict, then there may need to be some military action that takes place. Not that there would be American troops on the ground. Everyone pretty much agreed that there wouldn't be U.S. troops on the ground, but possibly, for example, strikes on Iran, or if like Syria decides that they want to send people down, maybe strike Syria. So it's a very volatile situation. Do not make the mistake and think that this is like other conflicts, because it is not at all. It is not at all. This is a major thing on the scale of the Yom Kippur War. And we've talked about the Yom Kippur earlier this year, a few different times because of things that have been going on in Israel, the social strife over the judicial overhaul, where they were talking about having a civil war. They also said that this is like the most dangerous time in Israelis, or this is the most dangerous time since the Yom Kippur War, because they were talking about how military readiness was going down because you had all these reservists that weren't showing up for duty and for training. And Israel's enemies were also talking about, wow, Israel is becoming really weak right now. And I was wondering during this whole time, well, if that's what you think, why aren't you attacking? Because when's the next time going to be that Israel has so much division? Who knows when that would happen? Well, it turns out that the answer was the 7th of October is when they decided to take advantage of this. Also, everything that I've heard is that Israelis are coming together. They're putting aside this whole protest movement for right now. Everyone's coming together. which is good. They're coming together. Reservists are showing up for duty. I haven't heard anything about people not showing up. They are reporting for duty. There's a lot of reservists that are being mobilized and heading south to be part of this ground invasion. And yeah, so we really could, and in some way it's already happening, but we really could have a situation, I think, where all throughout the country, people are killing each other. Where people, doesn't matter if you're a Palestinian or you're a Arab Israeli in Tel Aviv, and then you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my part. And then you go out in the street and then you shoot up as many people as you can, because Hamas already set the example of like, we just need to kill them all. Just kill all of them. I really think that that's why they did that. That's like one of the reasons why they did that. They targeted yesterday, Hamas targeted Ben Gurion Airport with rockets, but I haven't seen any indications that they were really successful at doing any significant damage to the airport. But they are serious. I know that Hezbollah in the north, the ones that are kind of like waiting to join in, I know that they have a lot of rockets. So I don't know if that's going to be like the next phase. But that's something to think about. If you'll remember, it was in 2020. I had to like think back. In 2020, that's when you had the Beirut port explosion, where you had all the ammonium nitrate that went off. Now, there are those that believe, like official sources, not just like people on YouTube. There are those that believe that that stockpile was actually for Hezbollah so that they could, so that they can make weapons and, explosives and stuff like that. And so therefore this explosion may not have been the result of an accident, but possibly like a clandestine or at least covert action to take out that stockpile of ammonium nitrate. So that was back in 2020. Who knows what other things they may have that haven't been destroyed, or who knows if like some of that stockpile somewhere else in the country has been replenished. But they're well funded. Again, they're funded by Iran. I think I already said this, but it's basically come to light. The United States, I don't think, has officially recognized it. But there have been reports that have said that Iran is the one that has been behind the organization of these attacks, as well as giving the go-ahead to Hamas to do it. That they gave like the official go-ahead. And there are scenes. I have video of this on X. If you go to my X account, there are scenes where they're having like official like celebrations in Iran of these attacks, where you have people out in the streets. It's like a festival, like when you go to like a 4th of July gathering, like where everybody gathers to watch the fireworks, and you have people, vendors and stuff like that. There are scenes like that, people dancing, projectors projecting, the Palestinian flag up on the side of a building or a monument or something like that. So you have that's going on in Iran, but also throughout the world. There's also videos of people in like New York. Where were the places that I saw it? New York, London, Berlin, San Francisco. Those are the only ones I can say for sure, but where you have Palestinian supporters in those locations coming out on the streets with flags and celebrating this attack. So the effects of this is like really widespread. I'm sure that there's like some degree of like celebration whenever there's an attack, but this one was so big that people were like coming out and having like official like street celebrations because of what's happening. And there's actually been scuffles between Palestinian supporters and Israeli supporters like in New York, for example, I think it was in New York where it showed there was like a fight that broke out between the two groups, people taking away flags of the other group and hitting and stuff like that, like, violence. Um, so it's like this has really caught the attention, I think, of the entire Arab world. And I don't know. I don't know. But I'm not sure that I've heard in the past like this kind of call to destroy Israel. Like, you guys, this is it. This is the one. This is the final battle. Everybody show up. They've probably always said that to some extent, but this is like the main messaging that Hamas is putting out there, is to destroy Israel. And like I said, the name itself is basically a call to action. Flood, or Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. The call out is, hey, everybody, flood Israel, flood Al-Aqsa Mosque, do whatever you need to do. So things are going to be, they already are really bad, and I think that they're just going to get worse. I know some of you might have the tendency to believe, well, this can't be it because A, B, and C has to happen first. We haven't seen this prophecy take place. We haven't seen that prophecy. You could be right, but I would warn you that you may not know how prophecy is fulfilled, or if it has been fulfilled, or if it is fulfilled in a way that you do not think. I don't understand why there's sometimes this like very rigid, like, no, it has to happen this way. That's fine if you think that, but I think it would behoove you to be flexible and be open to the possibility that maybe things aren't going to happen how you think, and on the, according to the schedule that you think, and according to these like numbers, 42 months, 1,260 days, 1,290 days, on and on and on. It could be, but that doesn't seem to be the position of the church or Joseph Smith. Again, go watch my playlist. I'm not going to repeat it all here, but you look at church manuals when they talk about those numbers. It could be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is not. I would not, again, I've been saying this a lot lately, I would not roll those dice. There's a danger in thinking that, oh no, it cannot possibly happen yet, because then you're complacent. You're in a mindset that, oh, there's still time, like I'm okay. And if you have things in your life that you need to turn around and that you need to fix, then you're under a potentially false assumption that you still have time. There's danger in thinking that way. But if you leave yourself open to the possibility that things can happen sooner than you think, then hopefully that would make you more likely to be prepared in your personal life. And then if it does happen, then you're prepared and you won't be caught by surprise. So I cannot believe that this is happening myself. I don't know. I'm trying to think here, because I really think I'm not saying watch the X videos, but I think it really gives you an understanding just exactly what's happening. It's one thing to kind of like read about it in the news, but to actually see the actual scenes, like it looked like a movie. Like it looked like a terror plot in a James Bond movie or something like that. The way that it played out. That's how well choreographed and orchestrated this whole thing was. And I want to clarify one thing. On Saturday, I said that there was a video of like people running, like in the desert or in a farm field. It looked like it was kind of a farm field, but through the dirt. just like a huge group of people running. And I thought that they were people running from one of the settlements, like one of the towns, like running out of town to like somewhere else. It turns out that there was this like desert rave, like a festival, um, young people coming to dance to, techno music and whatever. It was called the Supernova Festival, and there's pretty incredible uh videos of that where you had like people are taking video of like, oh, everybody dancing, having a good time. And there's one video where it shows the people on the paragliders in the distance. Like you see these like different paragliders coming in, and these are guys that were coming in on paragliders, um that had, weapons. And I don't know exactly how it played out, if it was like the paraglider people or if there were like other people that were on the ground. But essentially, they came to this festival and started killing people and capturing people. And then everybody else, they just like ran. I don't know exactly where it was taking place, but it must have been kind of like out away from any town or something like that. It was like some place where they were having this desert rave. And so they were just like running just away, away from the shooting. And it was a very scary and horrific scene. Um, I can't help but to think that simply doing a ground invasion is going to cross red lines for people in the Islamic world. But on top of that, completely destroying Hamas, I feel like that is yet another red line, and it's going to go a step further. Um, and then I don't know what the plan is for after they succeed. Like I don't know if like they're going to try and like hand control of the Gaza Strip back to the Palestinian Authority, because that's how it was before Hamas took control. I can't remember if that was like in 2014 or something like that. I remember when it happened that Hamas took the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority, and then they became the de facto government. But there's just like, I have a lot of questions about what's going to happen after this. Like nobody knows. Just like anything that happens in the world, like people have guesses, you have experts that think this and think that, but ultimately nobody knows. But I do want to highlight the high potential for things to come to a head and for this to actually be it, to be the final battle, to be Armageddon. You know, I guess I should address this. There's always, the one person that's like, well, what about the 200 million that are supposed to be in the valley of Armageddon? Things in the book of Revelation a lot of times are symbolic. Sometimes they're literal. And there are a lot of people that are involved in this conflict right now. You have people all throughout the world that are supporting this attack on Israel, all across the entire Islamic world. In fact, let me look this up really quick. I'm not going to put it on the screen. How many Muslims in the world? It's like over 1 billion, I know. 1.8 billion Muslims. Okay. So for one thing, you already have a large number of them. Not all Muslims, obviously. But, 200 million out of 1.8 billion. Yeah, there's probably at least that much that support the Palestinians. On top of that, there are outside forces that support different conflicts. They have their own political agendas, or they have their own master plans. So we can't know for sure who else is behind this. We know that Iran is. So you have you have the Iranian government that's behind it, and then very possibly and even likely Iran's allies like Russia. In fact, Russia came out yesterday and said they made a call for the two-state solution and for East Jerusalem to be the capital of the Palestinians. You know, so you have a lot of different groups throughout the Muslim world, and then certain nations that would be in support of what's going on, supporting Iran and supporting Hamas and the Palestinians and stuff like that. So when we're talking about 200 million, I'm not picturing, I mean, it could be this way, but if you think that 200 million people are going to be in northern Israel, I don't think that that's correct. I think I looked it up one time. Let's see. How many troops in World War II? Okay, World War II, there were a total of 126 million people. Okay, so you would have to have all the combatants of World War II and then some. Then you'd have to almost double that to get the 200 million, and all of those people be in the geographic location of Israel. I don't think that's likely. I think it's more likely that you have all these people outside the country that are supporting the Palestinians and whatever, and that would be fulfillment of that scripture. So we can go on and speculate, but the fact of the matter is, I think that things can get really bad really fast, and for all we know, because it's not like I was just saying, we've seen fighting in East Jerusalem already. There's already been fighting in Jerusalem. So if we're talking about an actual siege on Jerusalem itself, that may already be beginning as we speak, because you have people all throughout the country all mixed in that can take up arms. And then it's not like you have to wait for, let's go to Google Earth. It's not necessarily like a traditional war where it's like, okay, the people in Gaza need to go ahead and start marching on Jerusalem. They have to take Ashkelon, and then they have to like take these cities, and they have to take this territory, and then they'll march on Jerusalem or Hezbollah or the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade or other Palestinian groups in the West Bank. It's not like, I don't think it has to be like an army that just like encompasses the city. I think it's just as simple as the people that already live here, a lot of them Muslims, already living in the city, and then just losing their minds and attacking Jews in Jerusalem, killing people, ravishing the women, as the scriptures say, which there's already been a lot of reports of ravishing going on. So I think that things can get really bad really quick, and not in like this nice timeline kind of way, but just simultaneously throughout the country. Don't really know. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But I would not discount the possibility that this could be it. Well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.